Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 21, verses 20 through 28. Jerusalem is once again warned by Jesus, as he's warned them in chapter 13 and 19. He tells them, the wrath of God is coming upon you. You're going to be surrounded by armies. And sure enough, 35 years later, the Jewish revolt begins. And in 2 years' time, the Roman armies march through Judea, sack Jerusalem, and tear down the temple so that all that's left is the Wailing Wall. And there'll be refugees fleeing from the war, and Jesus tells them, don't go to the cities, don't go to Jerusalem, run out to the countryside if you want to avoid that. In verse 22, for the time of punishment is coming of all that has been written. And just as Jerusalem was warned of God's wrath, so too the church has been warned that it would be persecuted for bearing Christ's name. And those who simply are Christian in name only are also warned. In verse 23, it talks about how people are so afraid. There's such great distress, right? That they're going to be afraid to have children. And that's true today, that people are so overwrought with loneliness and depression and anxiety, even though we still live in a very prosperous time. People are afraid to have children. And just as Jerusalem and Judea could not believe that they, as God's chosen people, would fall to the pagans, today still, Christians cannot believe that the church is shrinking and diminished in import to the influence of the hedonists, the secularists, and the pagan. But it's because, as Jesus quoted Isaiah, these people worship me with their mouths, but their hearts are far from me. How many people who belong to churches only come, at best once or twice a month? They are so busy with so many other things throughout their week that it is not a priority. They worship with their mouths. They show up on occasion, but where are their hearts? Where are they investing their hearts? Verse 25, he says, you're going to see signs up in the cosmos and throughout the earth. The sun, the moon, and the stars are going to be shaken. The nations are going to be in anguish and perplexity over what's happening with the tides, with the waves of the ocean, with the climate. Things over which they have no control, over which they have no power. And how do we live life in the midst of such fear and foreboding, of such anxiety and dread? Where do we find peace and hope? And Jesus says in verse 27, at that time they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and glory. And when these things take place, when in the midst of all this dread, look up, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Christ has already come in power and glory. He has been resurrected, and our redemption has already come near to us. And so stand up and lift up your heads in faith. Christ has redeemed us. Well, thanks, friends, for listening to the Daily Plunge. If you like this, please, subscribe, share this with others, and encourage one another in the faith. Have a blessed day.